Bye-bye.
I'm Gary Benny, English rod builder living in Sweden. I've been building rods for many years, and now you're going to join me in my workshop going through tips, tricks, techniques, tools of the trade, all the things you want to know when you're coming to build a rod. We're going to drink a lot of tea, so join me on the ride. Let's have some fun. This is RodBuilding. Let's do this. Today we're hitting the glue bench. We're going to be going through what we use to glue up the rods, the grips. We've had a lot of questions asking, what glue for this and what's best for that. And I think maybe we'll just answer it by going and doing a little bit of a topic here today, a quick blow over of what glues I use for my rod building and why. There is a lot of you can use. You can go to your local hardware store. There are some glues that are more designed for purpose rod building. And by that I mean they're designed for the materials that they're going to glue to. So cork to carbon, or maybe EVA to carbon, or plastic, or whatever. There's lots of different ones. It's a bit of a minefield if you don't know, how and why. And I think that's what we're going to answer. We're going to answer the why. So let's get stuck in and go over these glues. Hopefully it won't be too boring. Stick around, and we'll see what we can do. So first up, I've got everything in front of me here, and I've got a range of different glues. I've got wood glues, I've got PU glues, I've got pastes, fast set, slow set, I've got epoxy glues in different forms, and then I've got some stuff that I'm going to be needing to actually use them, like some mixing sticks and some bits to mix on and stuff, and some cork presses and jigs. So I think the best thing we do is if we go through sort of each glue in turn and talk about its main use, why I would use it, when I would use it, and even how I would use it in the best possible way. So first up, we're looking at glues for cork, and for that I'm generally going to be using wood glues, and the reason for that is because I like that they're easy to clean up and they dry clear, which is obviously really good when you finish the grip. I tend to use indoor-outdoor wood glues like a D3. They're water resistant, they're solvent free, so they're quite friendly to work with. Like I said, they're just going to be easy to clean up really. If you use them sort of in cork jigs, etc., like these ones, or if you're going to be putting onto a whole rod, it's very easy to wipe down with a rag. You're going to have to wait a little bit for it to set up properly before you can start sanding. I recommend about an hour, but you can read the specifications on the glue. If you're going to get a bit more into it, this is the best one I found. It's the Gorilla Glue. This one here is really, really good. It's just really strong, really easy to clean up. I like the set time on it. Yeah, just a recommendation from me to you. That's the one I use the most. And I tend to also use these clamps, which you've seen me using before maybe, and it's really, really quick and easy to use for cork rings. Like I said, not much to clean up. Some people will tend to use a PU glue. This is really good for gluing cork or wood, but one thing I don't like about it is it's got a longer cleanup time. When it's set, it's like stone, so it is quite hard to sand, and I see people with it splurging out all over the cork rings, and when you wipe it away, it takes a lot longer to clean up. So I do use this, but for a different way. I don't tend to use it for when I'm doing cork rings and stuff like that. Like I said, for just gluing cork to cork, personally, a good quality outdoor wood glue. That's what I'm going to be using. When we're going to be using the PU glues, I pretty much only ever use this when I'm going to be gluing cork to the blank. And actually, this is the only thing I will use now. I don't use two-part epoxies and things like that. I've just found that you're moving too much of the glue away. So using the wood glue is kind of easy to put on. You don't really need to think much about it. Just put a very small amount between each cork ring, put cork rings on each other, line them up, and then just using your press them up, and you'll see the glue will just sort of splurge out of the sides. Get a rag or a bit of tissue and just clean that away, and then just wait for it to dry. So it's pretty simple. So the PU glue, this one is pretty much the same setup as any glue. You're going to put it on and wait for it to go off, but it is a little bit more messy, and there's a few little tips and tricks I can give you. So I thought, why not do a little quick how-to. For this one, obviously I use this Cascol, polyurethane glue. You can get different brands probably. And I've got a bit of a scrap blank here and some cork that I'm going to be putting on. get yourself a mixing stick, and one important thing with this glue is it is kind of hard to clean off and it's an irritant. So I would recommend putting on a pair of these very fetching gloves here, just because you don't want to get it on your skin. And it is a bit hard to get off, to be honest. So yeah, that's good for the bond between the cork and the rod, but maybe not so much for your skin. So what you want to do is you want to get that ready, and then this one here. Now, we're not watering plants or anything. This is a bit of a tip and a trick. If you've used this glue before, you might know about this. Just get yourself some regular water from the tap, not too hot or anything, just regular water, room temperature, let's call it, and have a spray bottle beside you, and you'll see why in a minute. It's going to make it easy. So obviously, you've already sort of reamed your cork, and you know roughly where it's going to go. So we're going to put this just on the end of this scrap bit of blank here, and all we're going to do is take our PU glue and we're going to put a small bead. Now, I see a lot of people making a mistake with this. They put way too much. You don't need a lot. It expands so much, you don't need a lot. Make sure you put the lid back on because it's activated by air. And then with your stick, just literally rub it up the blank to the position you want the glue to be. Make sure to cover all the surface where the cork's going to be. Of course, when you slide the cork on, it is going to push the glue around a little bit. And being that it's an expanding glue, it's going to spread a lot. You'll see in a second. So when you've got the glue fully spread over the blank, put your mixing stick down, and this is where we're going to use this bottle. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to spray a couple light mists just onto the blank, like that, on top of the glue. And what that's going to do is going to make the glue not move so much when we're going to put the cork on, but also it's going to help to activate the glue. And then very simply, we just push this into space, watching for any drips that we get. Now, with cork, remember, if you're pushing it down, the further you push it, the larger the blank's going to go. And if you've got a thin wall cork, you don't want to push it too far because you're chancing of breaking it. So just bear that in mind. That's pretty much ready. All we're going to do now is just do a little bit of cleanup, and then you'll see the magic of this glue. So we've got some tissue and we can see the glue is already starting to activate. I'm just going to clean around there because I don't want too much glue. And the setup time on this is pretty quick, but it's going to keep expanding. It's going to keep filling all the cavities in the cork. If you're just going to put this on the bench and walk away, you could come back with it dripping over other things. So do bear that in mind. I'm going to go make myself a cup of tea. And in the meantime, you're going to keep an eye on this for me so you can sort of see what I mean. So I'll put this little grip on here. I'm going to drop that down there and I'll see you in a minute. So how are we looking? You've been keeping an eye on this for me while I'm making my brew. Yeah, you can see that. It's been expanding. You can see the bubbles and everything around there. But again, if we used a lot of glue, it would be just pushing all the way down. I'm just going to check over the cork now. Sometimes you'll see with cork being porous, you will see the glue pushing out through. And I think that's a good thing because it's filling all the holes in the cork if there is any. I'm just checking this over now and it's looking really well bonded. But it's still setting. I'm going to give it a quick clean off. And that is how to use PU glue. So next up, we're looking at our 2 component glues. Now, basically, these are going to be combined of an A and a B, you could call it. And you're going to have a glue and an activator, you could call it. And most of these, or pretty much all of them, are 50-50. So you're going to mix equal amounts up, mix them up, and then they're going to start setting and activating. They're going to have different times. Some are going to be like 15-minute, 40-minute, 5-minute. You need to check the manufacturer's specifications, and it's going to tell you exactly how much you need to mix up, the recommended mix rate. Some of them actually you have to mix up a little bit more to make sure it's mixed thoroughly. Like I said, everyone's got their own they prefer. I tend to use a lot of the ones that are available from RodBuilding shops. I do use a lot of the 5 minutes. If I'm doing faster work, I do like it for real seats. We'll get over that in a minute why. So let's go through each one and talk about what I would use it for and maybe what I wouldn't use it for. The hows, the do's, the don'ts. So Pro Paste, this is a thicker glue, I guess you could call it. It's available in different varieties, and it's a thick paste. No easier way of saying it. It smells pretty much, so you know, using a well ventilated room. And basically every single one has its own specifications. This one here is about 40 minutes set time, I think, equal ratio mixing. It's pretty good stuff, but remember, you know, it's 40 minutes from when it's mixed up. And you're gonna have to think that it's gonna take a longer time to set, so you're gonna have to leave the rod on the bench for a little bit longer. If you're doing a quick set of rods, maybe the 15-minute is good. I like it because it goes off a bit quicker, which means it's gonna sit where you put it. You can see this one's really messy. I tend to use it quite a lot. I tend to use the Pro Paste more for when I'm doing EVA these days. I'm not really sure why, but also if I'm gonna be using for like large arbors where I need to build up the glue, and I don't wanna use a 2-part liquid glue, which might run around and get messy. It's gonna sit where you put it basically, so just bear that in mind. But you've also seen me, I do pressure fitting quite a lot, and the Pro Paste mixed with thinners really works, and you can push grips into crazy positions that normally you couldn't do dry. So Pro Paste, definitely a top tip for me. I always have that ready to use. Next up, we have the liquid glues. Now, these have just, as you can imagine, the viscosity is a lot looser, so this stuff is more runny. It's gonna run around. Again, similar kind of properties. You've got 40-minute set times, you've got 5-minute set times. You can get this for like 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes. So shop around, buy which one you think you want to use. I personally stick with this 5-minute and this 40-minute. They work for me. And I've got a new one here, which I haven't really tried yet, but I hear it's really good. So it's environmentally friendly, less smell, so that's kind of good. Talking to smell, I would recommend for any of these kind of glues, you do it in a well-ventilated room, like I'm using, with ventilation, with fresh air coming in and being blown out, or you need to use a respiratory system because they are quite toxic. If you do get it on your hands or you get it in your eyes and anything, you need to clean it thoroughly. So just bear that in mind. Any sort of glues are hazardous. Now, when would I use a Pro Glue instead of a Pro Paste? Personally, I use the Pro Glue 5-minute when I'm gluing real seeds. I love that it's clear, and I like that it's very easy to clean up. The Pro Paste is going to be a little bit more sort of like milky colored when it's done, more yellowy, whereas this is going to dry clear. So around exposed reel seats, for example, maybe winding checks, trim, I tend to use this. Why I like this one a lot is because the setup time is so fast that I know if in 5 minutes time, it's going to be sat where I put it and it's not going to be running. If you're going to use the 40-minute, it is a little bit longer time, so you have to pay attention. If you've got any gaps and cracks and stuff, this stuff will find its way out. But it is also very nice to use if you're doing a lot of rods. If you've got very tight arbors and you're doing it in the middle, that's absolutely perfect. Other times I might be using this glue is if I'm maybe gluing up carbon grips, if I'm doing sheaths over foam, for example. I mean, there's many uses. Butt caps, I definitely use this most for butt caps and things. I like the fact that I can put it into the butt of the rod, stand the rod up, and I know that glue is going to run down around the stem of the butt cap and just get a good adhesion. So that's pretty much what I use on the bench. Other than that, there is a few other little bits of glue and some sim tips and tricks. So let's take those quickly and then we'll talk about how to use it. So there is a glue that does exist for rod building, and I think in life in general, that one there, super glue. I mean, it's a precision super glue. It's really good to have this sometimes. I use it if maybe there's little air bubbles coming in some, like if I'm doing tuna grips and stuff and I'm doing, you know, the cones at the end. You can just fill air bubbles with it. Also, it's really good to make sure winding checks stay in position sometime. You can just drop a little bit of this on there. It's not cheating, it's a good thing to have. I definitely recommend, I don't use it so often, but I would recommend having a little one of super glue around. Sometimes I know guys will also use this for when they're wrapping on really micro guides. They will use this just to sort of, put it in position and it will sit there. I personally would choose to use like a hot melt glue, like you see with the tip tops. The glue that I use for the hot melt isn't really just standard hot melt glue you can buy from your hardware store. It's actually like a harder plastic that melts at higher temperature. And I would recommend you get that one instead of the one you can normally find. And the reason for that is if you're gonna be building rods that are used in a humid or maybe a very warm environment, they're actually going to twist. And I think that's one thing you should really remember about your glues. I have spoken to some other rod builders who build in very humid conditions, and or rods are used in very humid environments, and they have to really check out what glues they use because they'll actually come loose because it gets so hot. I know that a friend of mine in Florida has had issues with this. So you need to experiment with the glues. It's not one rule for all. have a look around, have a play, and choose what's best for you. So then we're on to the last thing, and that is what you're going to use to clean with. First off, I would say always try and use hot soapy water if you can, and then step it up accordingly. If you need to go up to some cleaning alcohols, do so. I have two different sizes, the same stuff in both. One for just carrying around for quick emergencies, and then one bigger one which I'll fill the pump can with. And then if you've got really tough grime, you might need to step it up to acetone. I try not to use this if I don't have to, but sometimes for cleaning down blanks, etc., it's quite good. Just go careful with it. It is hazardous. All of them have advisories on the backs, of course. Just go careful. Don't use more than you need. Always put the lids back on and keep them in a locked, safe metal cabinet, and you won't have any problems. Unfortunately, you do have to use these for rod building because of the glues and the resins we're using, so it's just one of those things you have to live with. Well ventilated room, you're not going to have any issues. So now the glue bench is complete. We've put everything away, all the smelly stuff in a safe place, and hopefully now you've got some idea about what glues to use, for when and why, and maybe not what not to use. There's no real mistakes. Everything that glues it solid is good. I'm just giving you recommendations on what I think I've used that is better for which purpose. If you've got anything we haven't mentioned today you think is going to be good for me to know, please put in the comments below. We love to hear from you. And also make sure to subscribe to this channel to see more content that we're going to be bringing to you. We really like having you here. Until next time, it's been great having you on This Is RodBuilding, and that's a wrap.